Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be my team selection for Game Week 9. I've got 2 free transfers and different avenues for my transfer plans in the next couple of weeks. Nothing is decided yet, but I'll be talking about my thought process, and my final team will be revealed during the deadline stream on Friday. Be sure not to miss it by smashing the like button of this video, getting it to over 200 likes, and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers. We're very close towards that milestone, and we hit 29k during the Tuesday UCL Fantasy deadline stream, so thank you very much for your support. Check out all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships if you want to support the channel even further and to gain access to my videos very early on, as well as many other perks. There's also the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. After the first 5 game weeks of the season, I thought I made a huge mistake with my choice of goalkeeper. I went for Dean Henderson, who has been terrible ever since, to be fair. But I went for David Raya, who seemed almost untouchable in goal. Arsenal keeping clean sheet after clean sheet, even away to Tottenham Hotspur and Aston Villa. They also were very resolute against Man City with 10 men, but ever since, with some very promising fixtures like Leicester and Southampton at home, followed up by Bournemouth away, Arsenal haven't kept a single clean sheet. In fact, they've conceded 5 goals in that time frame, and there is a reoccurring theme this season of Arsenal going down to 10 men and really struggling to gain the 3 points as a result against Brighton, Man City, and now Bournemouth. So Raya was only able to get 1 point. His performance was very shaky. He made a few mistakes which set the tone from the beginning, even when Arsenal had 11 men. So Raya's been a huge disappointment on the wildcard in Game Week 6. I still think he's one of the best goalkeepers from now until the end of the season, but the next 3 fixtures look really tough. So if you are looking to make a bit of money to fund other moves, I wouldn't even mind selling David Raya to make that possible. My defensive line was also underwhelming, with Rico Lewis blanking in a 2-1 victory against Wolves, and Man City left it very late, but neither of my Man City players were involved in either goal. But I'm just happy that Rico Lewis is starting consistently, but he did play the full 90 minutes against Sparta Prague in the Champions League, and I look at the next 2 game weeks in FPL, and I'm convinced that Lewis will be benched in one of those matches, especially if Kyle Walker returns from injury very soon. Maybe in the next couple of days, if he's in training, I could see Rico Lewis being benched against Southampton, and hopefully I'm wrong about that, but if he isn't, I think he's one of the best defenders to start in Game Week 9, but there is that high risk, high reward factor of Rico Lewis that exists with most Man City assets, especially in the defensive line. My second defender was Gabriel, who's also been a huge disappointment on the Game Week 6 wildcard, and the double up in the Arsenal defense just hasn't worked, but in UCL Fantasy, I went for Raya and Gabriel on my Limitless, and they kept another clean sheet against Shakhtar Donetsk in that 1-0 victory. But the first half was good for Arsenal. They created chances. They should have been 2 or 3-0 up. But the second half was terrible, and Shakhtar Donetsk easily could have equalised. But Raya made a great save towards the end of the game, and Gabriel made so many blocks, and he's so solid in that defence. But with no Saliba against Liverpool, Timber is a doubt, Calafiori as well, and of course we'll talk about Saka very soon. It's not looking too promising for the Gunners, and you'd probably shift the favourites in that match from Arsenal to Liverpool based on the recent reports, but there are some updates, especially with the likes of Bukayo Saka, which could make a difference. And finally, the only defender to do something for me was Mykolenko, who kept a clean sheet in a 2-0 victory away from home against Ipswich Town, and he got a bonus point, so I'm very happy with Mykolenko. His effective ownership was also very low, so I can't really complain about Mykolenko too much. It was his first return for me so far this season, and hopefully he can stay fit, with Everton having great fixtures until early December. It's very rare to have no confidence in Cole Palmer in a given game week, but Liverpool away is one of the few exceptions throughout the entire season. Palmer can always do something from the penalty spot, or maybe just creating something out of nothing, or scoring a goal against the run of play, but that didn't happen against Liverpool in Chelsea's 2-1 loss. Jackson scored Chelsea's only goal, with Caicedo getting the assist, and he was probably the best player from both teams, and Palmer had a very quiet night. He missed a big chance as well, but I think in the long term, Palmer is a very easy hold, and from Game Week 12 onwards, a lot of people are going to buy him. His ownership is going to soar to 60% and above, and I wouldn't even mind captaining him against Newcastle or Man United coming up next, especially for those without Erling Haaland with that plum fixture against Southampton at home. My second midfielder was Semenyo, who came off my bench for the injured Bukayo Saka in that 2-0 win, and I was looking at the positives. Arsenal going down to 10 men. I've got a double up in the Arsenal defence, which we're never going to keep a clean sheet, but I thought maybe Semenyo could do something here, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. He missed some big chances against the Gunners, and ultimately Semenyo is still a decent budget midfielder, but he's facing Aston Villa and Man City next, and you've got plenty of other options like McNeil, who are much better over the next month or so. and I personally think Semenyo is probably worth skipping at this moment in time, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did something against Aston Villa. I just don't see many FPL managers really starting him when you've got other players with better fixtures and a higher ceiling in Game Week 9 and possibly beyond, even when Bournemouth's fixtures turn for the better. My third midfielder in Game Week 8 was Morgan Rogers, who was the only one to have returned in this position. He scored a lucky deflected goal against Fulham, and ultimately Aston Villa won 3-1, which was quite surprising. Emi Martinez made a penalty save as usual, and Aston Villa are going very strong in the Premier League and Champions League, where they're actually top of that table. I mean, the Premier League are doing really well in the Champions League right now. The top 3 spots are all occupied by English clubs, and even Arsenal are also unbeaten and in the top 9. But I think Morgan Rogers is still a good choice, but Villa's fixtures are turning after Bournemouth at home up next, and I don't think Morgan Rogers is someone you'd want to start in Game Weeks 10 and 11 necessarily, but Tottenham away isn't the worst fixture for an attacking player, and Rogers was phenomenal in the Champions League against Bologna in that 2-0 win. He got an assist and was arguably the best player on the pitch. The final midfielder I had, though, was Mbeumo, who blanked against Man United, a bit of a surprise there, and another 2-1 defeat, this time for Brentford, of course, but I still like Mbeumo long term. I believe we can give him a pass because of his consistency this season, and he's not going to return in every single match necessarily, and Old Trafford can still be a difficult place to go to for teams like Brentford. So ultimately, it's now from Game Week 9 onwards where you'd really want to double up on Brentford potentially with the likes of Wissa and Mbeumo. They're by far the best Brentford assets. I still think Mbeumo is slightly above Wissa, but that could easily change with Wissa being the cheaper asset at 5.9 million, and you've got few alternatives in the forward line. My front line was also disappointing, with Erling Haaland blanking for the first time in 3 consecutive games in this competition, but he did score a brace in the Champions League against Sparta Prague as my captain in UCL Fantasy. The first goal was an unorthodox finish. It was really well taken, but he hasn't really been able to transfer this to the Premier League yet. But no worries, he's got Southampton at home over the weekend, and you could easily see him scoring a brace or a hat-trick despite the lack of form in the Premier League. My second forward was Chris Wood, who scored a goal and got a bonus point against Crystal Palace in that 1-0 victory. A bit disappointed he didn't get 2 or 3 bonus points, but that's kind of nitpicking. At least Chris Wood got me something. And really, if we're looking at my entire 15-man squad, only Mikalenko, Chris Wood and Rogers got any returns for me. The rest blanked. And as you can see, my final forward was Solanke. Spurs scored 4 goals against West Ham in the early kickoff, and neither Johnson or Solanke were involved in any of them, which was very surprising to say the least, but FPL can sometimes be like that, especially after an international break, and it's another red arrow, spoiler alert, for my team. But let's talk about my rank, the game week points I got, and the captain, which once again was a big disappointment. I captained Erling Haaland again, and he blanked yet again, so only 36 points for the game week. My overall points is 475, and my rank went down from around 1.3 million to 1.5 million. Back in Game Week 3, I was around 266,000. I was doing really well. Then as soon as I started making transfers in Game Week 4 after the first international break, things went south, and that's only been exacerbated by the Game Week 6 wildcard. So it's about time I get back on track. I think in the last couple of weeks hasn't been too shabby, but it's still not good enough, and ultimately green arrows are what we're chasing, and 36 points is nowhere near enough, even in a low-scoring game week, to get the green arrows necessary to get to the ranks we want to, and also to perform as well as we definitely are capable of. So let's talk about my Game Week 9 team selection. I've got 2 free transfers, and I'll be showing you the most likely scenario, but things can definitely change, and I probably won't be making any transfers until the deadline stream or shortly before that takes place, because I don't want to make early transfers before the European games have all finished. We've got some Europa and also Europa Conference League games coming up very soon on the Thursday, the 24th of October. So try to ensure you don't make transfers until those games are finished if possible. But I understand why some people may have gone early with their moves in order not to be priced out or for a reason along those lines. Let's now go over to my Game Week 9 team selection, starting with the goalkeeper, and things aren't looking too good in my defensive line. I still have faith in the Arsenal defence long term, but in Game Week 9, facing Liverpool at home, who are top of the Premier League table, without Saliba, who's suspended, and the likes of Timber and Calafiori are major doubts for that game. Even Saka could have a big impact overall with how Arsenal approached that game. I'm not very optimistic about David Raya's prospects, and that's why I wouldn't rule out a goalkeeper transfer in either Game Week 9 or 10, because I've got that double up in the Arsenal defence, and I wouldn't mind trimming that down to just the 1 until their fixtures clear up and also the injury situation gets better. I'm not really one for goalkeeper transfers, but it wouldn't surprise me to sell David Raya very soon. This is certainly not locked in for me, but I'm currently going for Mykolenko at home to Fulham, and I've got a few benching dilemmas, especially with my defenders. Now, Everton aren't the strongest defensively, but Branthwaite could make a huge impact to their prospects of keeping a clean sheet in Game Week 9. He will likely feature in this game. He might even start over Michael Keane, as he was close to making it against Ipswich Town away in Game Week 8. My second defender would be Rico Lewis at home to Southampton, but I'm a bit fearful of a benching here, especially if Kyle Walker is in training in the next couple of days. So watch this space. If Walker isn't available, then Rico Lewis might live to fight another day, and I'd be very happy because Southampton at home is by far the best fixture Man City have for many months, and probably until the end of the season, arguably, as Southampton are really struggling. My final defender could be Van den Berg at home to Ipswich Town. I do not trust Brentford defensively whatsoever, even less so than a team like Everton, but I think Brentford could keep their first clean sheet of the season in this match, and it's about time because I think historically under Thomas Frank, they are right up there for the expected goals considered figure over the last couple of seasons. I believe they were 8th in the last campaign, but this year they just seem very suspect defensively, and Ipswich Town, despite their faults going defensively, I think they can score goals and create chances and cause some problems for Brentford. This could be a very high-scoring game, which I'm kind of hoping isn't the case, at least not for Ipswich Town's sake, and Brentford could get many goals whilst keeping the clean sheet. If Bukayo Saka is ruled out, I will likely move to Heung-min Son or Phil Foden. It really depends on, do I really want to tackle Game Week 9 specifically, with Southampton at home being exceptional, or go for the next 3 to 4 game weeks before going back to Saka around Game Week 12, or possibly using this as a stopgap for a Mohamed Salah in the near future. My current inclination is towards Heung-min Son, but it is worth mentioning some key updates about Saka and Heung-min Son. So with Saka, we got this news yesterday on Wednesday, the 23rd of October, by Sam C from the United stand, and he said Bukayo Saka is expected to be available for the match against Liverpool after having completed first team training this week, which is a massive boost for the Gunners, but it all depends on if he feels any complications or niggles. If that's the case, he may not be risked, he might even be a substitute in that game, but if all goes well, he's going to start against Liverpool, and I think that changes the dynamic of that game and gives Arsenal a much better chance of creating opportunities, scoring goals, and getting the victory. As for Heung-min Son, Ange Postecoglou did state in his Wednesday press conference ahead of their Europa League game that Son was a bit sore after the weekend. He was never going to be involved tomorrow anyway because he missed a bit. So we're leaving him out tomorrow and see how he is. But I'm still very confident Heung-min Son will play this weekend against Crystal Palace, who are winless so far this season. And Oliver Glasner is in real trouble. There are reports they could be sacked by the next international break. The second midfielder, though, is going to be quite certain. Cole Palmer at home to Newcastle. He's even a captaincy choice for me this week, and I wouldn't even mind going there, but I do have a certain Erling Haaland up front, and there are even alternatives in the midfield position that could be another captaincy contender. Next up is Morgan Rogers at home to Bournemouth. He is in great form at the moment with 2 goals in his last 3 Premier League games, and of course that man-of-the-match performance against Bologna in the Champions League, so I'm very confident about him for now. And finally, Brian Mbeumo against Ipswich Town is definitely someone to consider for the armband. I would not dispute that. Even Wissa up front, although his minutes would be a bit of a concern having just returned from injury. But I think that boosts Mbeumo's chances of getting returns. They can link up with each other very well. And I think Brentford boasts plenty of good FPL options, particularly in the attack. I'm going for my trusted 3-4-3 formation with Solanke away to Crystal Palace. He has been very underwhelming recently with no shots in the last 2 matches, but I think the opportunities will come, and once he gets those big chances, he will take some of them. But I'm a bit concerned about the lack of bonus points this season. That's something Solanke needs to address, and I think he will get some by the time he faces Ipswich Town at home. I think after that game, we could see 1 or 2 bonus points at the very least, and hopefully he can do something similar against Crystal Palace. But I think the clock might be ticking for Solanke. If he doesn't deliver by that stage around Game Week 12, I think he'll become a very easy sell for many FPL managers, and some people are considering doing it right now, which does make sense in certain scenarios. I think there is the chance to maybe downgrade him to a cheaper forward and then upgrade one of your midfielders to a Salah, to name one particular example, and I wouldn't mind that in the next couple of weeks. My second forward, though, would be Erling Haaland at home to Southampton. If you've still got the triple captaincy chip, I think there's a great opportunity to use it. He has banked in 3 consecutive games in the Premier League. It's going to be very rare and very unlikely he's going to do it 4 times in a row, facing the worst team in the Premier League, arguably, in Southampton who concede chances for fun, and they average 3 goals conceded every single match with this current rate. And City, of course, just came off the back of a 5-0 win against Sparta Prague. Haaland scored 2 of those goals, and if he had stayed on the pitch, he would have taken the penalty to cement a hat-trick. So I really back Erling Haaland to do well this week, and I would triple captain him if I still had the chip. And finally, the dependable Chris Wood will be my final player, and he faces Leicester City away. I think he can get a goal here and maybe a bonus point or two, as he tends to really get this season. And I have to say, Chris Wood has been one of my best picks from the very beginning in Game Week 1. And that's why sometimes you need to go against the grain, go for these low-owned players, even if people are telling you he's not going to do the business, or they might put a reason as to why you shouldn't go for him, like, oh, they're going to sign a striker and Chris Wood isn't going to be nailed on. Sometimes football is unpredictable and you've got to back your gut and go for these picks. My bench could be as follows. Valdimarsson in goal. I don't really have any option with my choice of goalkeeper this week. Semenyo, Gabriel and Aït-Nouri. But let's actually break this down a little bit. So it's between Gabriel and Mykolenko to start at the moment. And because I've got David Raya already in my setup, I'm currently benching Gabriel. But this could be a mistake because Arsenal might target set pieces against Liverpool. And if Saka's back, that boosts the chance of Gabriel getting a goal from a corner, because both of his goals this season have been assisted by Bukayo Saka in big matches against Spurs and Manchester City. So I may reconsider that. And my second free transfer could be Aït-Nouri for Jacob Greaves. And that's kind of a transfer to ensure I don't get priced out. So buying Son and Aït-Nouri means I can get both of them in and have them in place for the long term. Wolves have an excellent fixture run, but Brighton away isn't an easy game right now. So he would be someone to sit on the bench in Game Week 9 and then start against Southampton at home in Game Week 10. And even beyond that, I really like Wolves' fixtures and I could see myself starting Aït-Nouri more often than not. But that isn't a guaranteed transfer. The same goes for Heung-min Son in for Saka. If Samsi is correct and Saka is available, I may want to hold him at least for Game Week 9, because then that gives me the opportunity to have free transfers available in Game Week 10, and that means it's actually a bit easier for me to buy Mohamed Salah if I want to captain him against Brighton at home. But let me show you some alternatives later on using fpl.team. Before I do that though, let's talk about the captaincy here, and then later on, of course, I'll go to Drafthound discussing some other possible transfers. But at the moment, I think there's no doubt about it. Erling Haaland is the best captaincy option in Game Week 9, facing the worst team in the Premier League, and Cole Palmer would be my vice, although Mbeumo is another tempting option. And apart from that, I don't think I'd captain anybody else. If I bought Phil Foden instead of Heung-min Son though, that could be another shout for the captaincy. He got the Player of the Match award in UCL Fantasy and got 11 points in that format, and he's been exceptional in the Champions League. If only he could kind of translate those minutes and returns to the Premier League as well, I think everybody would be going for him. But at the moment, those are my proposed 2 free transfers of Heung-min Son and Aït-Nouri. That's the most likely on Thursday, the 24th of October. But if Saka is available against Liverpool, which does seem more likely now, I might end up keeping him and actually rolling the transfer, having free available for Game Week 10, which could be very useful indeed. But let's now go over to Drafthound and see what they recommend for my transfers. There is a link to Drafthound in the description below. I'd highly encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. Many of you have signed up using my link and talked about how useful this website is. There are many great tools like the player rankings, which I've shown you many times this week already. But right now, let's go to my transfer suggestions, and they're saying Gabriel and Saka out for Gvardiol and Son, and they update the predicted points on a regular basis. So only yesterday, Saka's expected points was 5.1, but due to the latest updates, they have downgraded him to 0.8, so they're not backing him to start, but that might change over the next day or so with the Samsi report I mentioned earlier. The second suggestion would be Gabriel and Solanke out for Gvardiol and Welbeck, who has been in training, but they're going to see if he can play against Wolves at home. He was actually a hold in my Transfer Tips podcast, so be sure to check that out as well. And the third suggestion would be Saka and Rodgers out for Son and Kovacic, although I have to say that's probably by far the worst suggestion they've gone for. I could see myself doing number 1 or 2. Gvardiol is another really good transfer I'd actually consider. If I don't sell David Raya, I could do Gabriel to Gvardiol, and that's also in my thinking. So as you can see, I'm kind of open-minded about my transfers. I'm most likely going to go for Son and Aït-Nouri at the moment, but that could easily change, and tune into the deadline stream to find out what my final moves are going to be. Or do I just roll the transfer and stick with what I have? Let's now head over to fpl.team, a great website which allows you to visualize future game weeks, and I'm going to show you what I could do if I roll the transfer this week. As always, let me know down in the comment section below what you think of my setup and any other points you may want to raise about Game Week 9. So By rolling the transfer, I would have David Raya in goal, a back three of Vandenberg, Lewis, and either Gabriel or Mykolenko. Now, FPL.team and many algorithms do suggest going for Gabriel over the Evertonian, and that's something I may change in my deadline stream. The midfield four would be Palmer, Mbeumo, Saka, and Rodgers, with Solanke, Haaland, and Chris Wood up front. The captaincy wouldn't change here. Haaland would be my captain and Palmer would be the vice. Mbeumo would be another option, as discussed earlier. Valdimarsson, Semenyo, Mykolenko, and Greaves would be on my bench, and the expected points is 64.3. Now, by rolling the transfer, this would allow me to have 3 available in Game Week 10, and I could buy Salah as a result, but it would require downgrading Solanke to a budget forward like Raul Jimenez, and possibly downgrading Raya to another goalkeeper like Sells, Sanchez, or Onana. That will be my current thinking, because I'd like to keep Gabriel in the long term, but if not, it would be Gabriel making way to somebody like Gvardiol or someone even cheaper to make the other moves possible, and keeping David Raya, who faces Newcastle away in Game Week 10 and then Chelsea away in Game Week 11. So it's not looking too good for the Gunners right now, but when the going gets tough, they do seem to rise to the occasion a lot of the time and keep clean sheets against the best teams in the Premier League. So maybe selling Arsenal defenders or even David Raya in goal could be a mistake, but ultimately getting Salah and captaining him against Brighton looks very appealing indeed. There are some tough games for Liverpool in the short term, like Arsenal, of course, in Game Week 9, but I think beyond that, you've got Man City very soon. But I still like Liverpool's prospects. They've got Southampton as well on the horizon, and I think Salah could be a great captaincy choice in such game weeks. As always, like I said, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Follow me on that platform and leave a 5-star review. It would go a long way to supporting my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 9 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.